Is he up the fence? Colding into the clear now. He's ambushing the now. Colding right over the top. Swooped, won the Golden Eagle. The Autumn Sun, he really has to dig deep. The Autumn Sun, he wins the Guineas. Today we farewell an Australian icon, the greatest of all time. Winks wins a third, Queen Elizabeth.
Having selected the winners of close to 50 Group 1 races, Kiwi bloodstock agent Guy Mulcaster has one of the best eyes in the industry. We sat down with him at Karaka to learn more. Guy, let's take it back to the beginning and tell me a little bit about your childhood growing up and if there was any involvement in horses.
Well, basically, Emily, it's a lifelong passion. I always wanted to be involved in horses one way or the other. I used to go and work at the horse studs when in between school holidays and that sort of thing, and from there I moved to work at some studs after I left school at Waikato Stud in Windsor Park, and then decided to get into the training side of things and worked for Moroney's and O'Sullivan's, and eventually went into partnership with Laurie Laxon before he went to Singapore.
Were your family involved with horses?
My father raced horses all through my childhood and that sort of thing, and into my teenage years, and that sort of got the bug really going, but you know, the thrill of actually being involved with horses on a day-to-day basis is just amazing.
Tell me about some of those aspects that you've been involved with when you were growing up. Did the stud side appeal to you? The training, you've seen it from such a broad spectrum.
Yeah, I think you go through phases and that sort of thing, but you know, to go overseas and work for horse trainers in England and be involved in English Derby winners and that sort of thing, it really made the racing side of it really appeal to me.
You came back to New Zealand following your time with Laurie Laxon, and you worked here at NZB. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, I worked at New Zealand Bloodstock for 10 years and started off in the air freight division and moved into the bloodstock side of things, and I think that was a great grounding for me before I started working for myself, to get to know, you know, how clients need to be looked after and that sort of thing, ongoing work with horses after you purchase them, making sure everybody's happy and you know that they've got a good article and that they're getting well looked after. And
little birdie told me that there might have been some auctioneering in there.
There was a little bit for a while, but I found my calling in the bloodstock side instead.
Was that always where you wanted to end up?
No, I just think it's just the way it worked out. I managed to get some good clients behind me before I decided to go on my own, and you know, being able to buy horses for good people, it's an amazing sort of thing, you know, like there's a lot of people out there that do the same thing as I do, but it's just having the clients to be able to buy the right horses for them.
Tell me about your career since then. Has it surpassed your expectations?
Oh yes, totally. We were lucky enough when I was working at New Zealand Bloodstock. I had a good friend, Bruce Sherwin. He got me to buy him a horse here at this sale at Karaka, and he became Blimey O'Reilly, who won the Waikato Guineas and subsequently sold to Hong Kong, where things didn't really work out for him, but it was a good stepping stone. We got a good horse there, and then later Raffles Farm took over, and Bruce managed them, and we managed to get a share in Shamrocker, and she was a Derby winner for us, and that was sort of the beginning of where it ended up now.
Tell me about some of the highlights for you in your career of horses that you've purchased. Maybe it's not the most successful horse, but significant horses.
Well, you know, we've had good horses like Sacred Falls and Kermadec and the Autumn Sun and Winks, of course. But, you know, it's an amazing thing. We have a golf group and we play every couple of weeks, and they give us $20,000 to spend every year at the sales. And the first one we got was Felton Road, and he ran third in the Cracker Million, and the second one was Jaeger Bombed, and he won a couple of races and was sold to Hong Kong. So this year the pressure's really on with my 20 grand.
Yeah, I'll bet. We can't talk to you without talking about Winks. Just tell me a little bit about purchasing her originally.
Well, you know, we were on a strict budget. The owners had 200,000, and for the first couple of days of the sale it didn't work out right for them. They couldn't actually get a horse that they wanted. They ended up upping their budget a little bit, and late in the sale we got a Street Cry filly.
What sort of stood out to you about her?
We were probably in a position where we couldn't buy the best looking yearling, but she had the shape and everything, and we thought she'd just improve with time, and in hindsight she did.
Tell me about her career, because I've talked to you in the past, I think at Randwick it was, and you said to me, we went to Queensland to get some black type, you know, to add to her value, but could you have imagined it was going to take the path it did?
After she got beaten the AJC Oaks by gust of wind, you know, she was pretty stringy, to be honest. She didn't really look the part, and she got to Queensland and she really enjoyed the climate there. Sunshine Coast Guineas was an amazing effort, and then onto the Oaks, and then she never looked back after that.
What for you was the greatest thrill in her career?
I think just seeing her sometimes when she, you know, she was out of carrots, she had no chance of winning, but she just found a way to do it, you know. And in the end, most of the time, you know, she actually won with something up her sleeve.
Has she had a significant effect on you and your career?
Well, she's had to have, because, you know, people introduced me as the person that found winks, and, you know, and that's a great thing to get new clients and everything, you know, it's helped immensely. You
speak of colding and winks and the autumn sun, and one thing they've all got in common is you've purchased them and Chris Waller's trained them. Tell me about your association with Chris Waller and how that came about.
Chris and I have had a long time association. I knew him before he actually started training in his own right, and I was lucky enough that he took me on board to start going to Europe to buy those horses. The first year we went, we bought two 20,000 pound horses, and they weren't very good, but they both won a race, and that meant that we could go back the next year and buy 4, and then the third year we bought 10, and the rest is history. But we were lucky enough to get horses like Foreteller and Stand Again in the first few years, and we got Moriarty after that. You know, proper Group 1 horses that won over $1 million.
When a person does come to you with a budget, do they have any involvement in the type of horse they want, a 2-year-old, a stayer? How does that process unfold? So
basically I get to know the people, and I sort of run through it with them and sort of find out what sort of budget and what sort of expectations they have for the animal. It's very hard to actually pigeonhole the horses, because, you know, they do what they want to do, and the only bit that you can't see is the bit you really want to know about, and that's the will to win. So, you know, we've had horses we thought were going to be nice 2-year-olds, and they end up being late 3-year-olds, and some of the 3-year-olds take till they're 5, you know. So I think don't pigeonhole them and just be happy with what you've got.
Talk me through the process of going through a yearling book. How long does that take you? That must be a lot of effort.
Basically, when the catalogue comes out, I sort of spend about a week sort of going through it, just highlighting stallions I like, dams I like, ones I don't like, and then the next part is actually seeing the animal. For a sale in the Gold Coast, we'd go up the Hunter Valley a month before the sale and see nearly 2/3 of the catalogue, which is over 500 horses. With Karaka, we see them all when they get on the grounds. I like to see them all on a level playing field. The horses we like, we go back and see again, and then probably for a third time, and then we decide who they're for, we get them vetted, and the rest goes on from there.
What's your criteria? What are you looking for in the horse?
Basically an athlete, yeah. They sort of tell you, it's amazing, you know, people might look at a horse for 10 minutes, I think in the first 10 seconds you know if you like them or not. It has a lot to do with the fact that you need A, an athlete, and B, a sound horse that lasts. You know, you can have a really good horse, but if it keeps having injuries and that sort of thing, it makes it very hard for it to reach its top potential. You look like in Australia these days have got a race like the Golden Eagle, which is for 4-year-olds, and we were lucky enough to win it with Colding this year, and he was a horse that had 6 starts as a colt for 1 win, and since he's been gelded he's had 7 starts for 6 wins, and he's picked up $5 million in prize money just this season, you know. So that shows you, you know, that if your horses last and that, they can win the big money.
And what about their demeanour and attitude? Is that important to you?
It is, because, you know, the pressure has to go on when they're getting fed very strong race feed. They have to be worked hard, and they have to adapt to all the climate and everything that they're put through.
You keep coming back to New Zealand to purchase these horses, and you're a very loyal supporter of the New Zealand industry. What do you love about the New Zealand bred?
Well, the good thing is, you know, if you look after them, you're going to get the results further down. We leave all our horses in New Zealand for a year, and then they get to Australia. Horse like Preferment had a race as a 2-year-old at Sandown over 900 metres in 5 months later he won the VRC Derby.
Tell me a little bit about what a typical day in your life looks like.
Well, you sort of go through the form in the morning and you work out if there's some horses to inspect, and you work out if there's some horses you can sell for different clients. We manage some horses, see how the weanlings are going, make sure they're in the right sort of sales, and then the afternoon's sort of spent catching up on races.
Bloodstock agents I've interviewed in the past, they have a rather jet-set lifestyle of flying around from sale to sale. Tell me about a year for you. How much travel is involved in your job?
Probably nearly half the year, but you know, a fair part of that's actually meeting with clients in different countries and that sort of thing, and seeing how they're situated going forward, if they're ready to buy again, or if they're happy with the horses we've bought for them and that sort of thing.
It sounds very glamorous, but it must be pretty tiring and taxing.
Yeah, but the thing is, you know, in between all these sales, you've got big races on, and luckily enough, you know, most of the time we've got horses represented in those races, and that sort of keeps you fired up looking for your next good one.
Do you feel the pressure when you're purchasing horses that they have to be good, or you take a pretty relaxed approach to it?
Well, you know, some are going to be good and some are going to be just no good. But the thing is, you know, like, the people come in there with their eyes open, and you know, people that can afford to race horses know that they've got to take the good with the bad, and you know, if they stick at it and they go in with good other people, they have great relationships, and then they get good horses.
It's a pretty fast-paced lifestyle. What does Guy do to relax in his free time?
We play golf and that sort of thing.
Yeah? How good at golf are you?
Not very good.
But you enjoy it?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there a race that you've still got that you really want to win?
It'd be lovely to win a Melbourne Cup, but lots of people try and not many have succeeded. But
would you look for something different in a horse for a Melbourne Cup?
Not really. I think they've just got to be able to get the trip. They've got to handle the atmosphere on the day, and you know, fingers crossed we're not far away from getting one.
A lot of your clients and trainers are in Australia. Is there sort of a lure for you to be basing yourself in Australia, or is the pull of New Zealand too much?
It's probably the next step, you know, being able to liaise with clients on a daily basis probably makes a big difference to your business. But the good thing is in New Zealand, you know, like, even though the prize money's not very good, the racing's very competitive, and the horse people are amazing. They go to Australia and perform day in, day out, punching above their weight.
What is on the agenda for Guy Mulcaster in the next few years? Have you got goals, or where's your business moving?
I think it's just to keep trying to buy nice horses for people, and you know, growing your business and just taking it step by step.
2019 ended on a sombre note with the death of influential sire Tavistock. Bred by the Duchess of Bedford, Lady Henrietta Tavistock, under her Bloomsbury Stud banner, Tavistock was by Monjou out of the Quest for Fame mare Upstage. Sold through Bloomsbury Stud's 2007 New Zealand Bloodstock Select Yearling Sale draft, Tavistock was purchased by trainer Andrew Campbell for $85,000 and raced by Tommy Heptonstall, David Allison, Chris and Johnny Barneo, Bruce Honeybone, Tom Pivac and David Platt. Under Campbell's tutelage, he made a winning debut as a 2-year-old at Trentham before transferring to the Caulfield stable of Mick Price for an Australian campaign that included a win at Flemington and a listed placing in the Vane Stakes. As a 4-year-old, he returned to Campbell's stable and won the Group 1 Mudgeway Partswold Stakes at Hastings and the Group 1 Waikato Draft Sprint before returning to Australia to claim the Group 2 Blamey Stakes.
Down the outside, Lord Tavistock. Now can't go on. Figure the leader with 100 metres to go. Lord Tavistock running to second on the outside. He's coming hard, Lord Tavistock. Grab the lead, Lord Tavistock beat Figure and Neck.
He was crowned New Zealand's champion sprinter of the 2009-10 racing season and retired to Cambridge Stud. At Stud, he has produced 19 stakes winners, including Hong Kong champion Werther, and Group 1 winners Volkstock and Barrel, Tarzino and Tavago. Tavistock suffered a paddock injury in October, and despite making significant progress from the initial injury, he sustained secondary complications and was put down on vet's advice. Described as an endearing character and loved by all who knew him, we remember him fondly and send our condolences to the team at Cambridge Stud and all who were privileged to be a part of his story.
Hey, how you going?
What's your best thing about living in Cambridge?
The horses.
What race would you most like to win?
Cox Plate.
Sprinters or stayers?
Stayers.
What's your social media of choice?
Instagram.
Favourite race course?
Moonee Valley.
Favourite jockey?
J-Mac.
Best race horse you've ever seen in action?
Apache Cat.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Netflix or a book?
Netflix.
Phone call or a text?
Phone call.
Big party, small gathering?
Small gathering.
Online shopping or shopping in store?
Neither.
Coffee or tea?
Tea. Coffee.
Favourite sport outside of racing?
Rugby.
If you had a TV show, what would it be about?
The life of Brighthill Farm.
Oceans or mountains?
Oceans.
Do you prefer mornings or evenings?
Evenings.
Thanks, Benji.
Thank you very much.
Stand by. Racing. Vegas Jewel presents it. Here's Miami Bound. Oliver hasn't moved. Miami Bound lets down and takes Vegas Jewel, trying to go with her. Miami Bound in front, 100 metres to go. She's toughing it out. She's won the Oaks for Damien Oliver. Miami Bound wins it by 3 lengths.
Russell, a little bit of a chat about Miami Bound. First of all, tell me, how did you come up with the mating decision to send Arafo Miss to Reliable Man?
Well, she was a middle distance winner of the highest element and winning the WEVC Oaks herself, so I'm always a fan of trying to breed like to like, and so we looked at our staying stallions that we had and felt physically and pedigree-wise that Reliable Man was probably the horse that would suit her best and give us the best opportunity of either getting an Oaks winner or a middle distance horse out of a mating.
And an Oaks winner is exactly what you got. Do you remember her as a foal?
Yeah, probably one of Arapaho Miss's traits a little bit is that her foals aren't over big, and basically they're very correct foals, but just very, not so much small, but just very average sized foals. And both her first foal that we had by All Too Hard, who's called the Little Sister, and then Miami Bound, were just on the neat side of horses, and probably what's held her back from really making good money at the sales. But she was always a smart little filly, well balanced, and plenty of natural muscle and plenty of attitude.
Was she always intended to go to the sale ring, or was there perhaps other plans for her?
No, she was always intended to go there. I think predominantly the only exception is probably about 3 or 4 mares that we don't put their progeny in the broodmare sales and the yearling sales. So most of our yearlings at some stage, if it's there or later on it's a ready to run horse, will go to a sale. So she was always destined to go to a sale, and then we're hopefully going to have another foal or two to follow up where we can actually extract some value out of.
Tell me a little bit about that yearling preparation. Did it go as planned?
Very straightforward, yeah. We had no issues at all with her. She was a very easy filly to prepare, and it's just step by step she just did everything spot on, and so we had no problems with her at all. And probably you look back now and you think, well, she's by Reliable Man, now of a WEVC Oaks winner, half sister to a stakes winner in the Little Engine. You would have thought maybe 120,000 was probably below the odds, but I think, as I say earlier, it was probably just her size that stopped her from making that 200,000 or 300,000, and all to the benefit of the new owners.
Despite her price, was she popular at the sale?
Yes, she was, and it was interesting because Danny O'Brien trained the Little Engine, the half brother, and he won over 700,000. Pat Kerry trained Arapaho Miss himself and herself when she was racing, and Pat had bought the All Too Hard filly the year before, so it ended up that they were the two that had several looks at the filly and were buyer and underbidder come sale time.
The 120,000 was a little bit disappointing from your point of view?
Yeah, I guess it would have been, but as I say, look, it's still, when you're getting out into those 6 figures, it's hard to gauge to, should they make 150, should they make 120, or should they make 180, or should they make 100, so I think we had a $80,000 or $100,000 reserve on her. She's made 120, which is above our expectations at the time, and she's gone on and done us very, really proud since.
Must have been pretty glad when it was Danny O'Brien who purchased her, because she gets her best shot at a career. When did she next sort of pop up onto the radar for you?
Look, we heard that he was happy with her and liked the filly. and I was actually quite blown away. I saw the fields one day, and she was in an 1100 metre 2-year-old race at Flemington down the straight, and I thought, gee, you know, it's by a reliable man. It's meant to be winning an Oaks, this filly, and they've got an 1100 metre sprint at Flemington. And she ran huge. She got back, and Damien Oliver rode her, and she flashed home, ran third in that, and I thought, well, there's a flashing light on this one to say it's going to be a nice horse when she steps out next year at 3, and Julie has hardly put a foot wrong since she's through a 3-year-old year.
What's it been like following her? It must be pretty exciting to have produced her, seen her as a foal, and then watch her crossing the line in an Oaks.
Well, as you well know, things don't always go to plan in the horse game, and you can always have your hopes and your expectations of what's going to happen, but you know, she came back from a spell and won impressively first up, and won her next start impressively, and everyone then looking at her pedigree was starting to say, hey, this is a VRC Oaks filly, and she got beaten a couple of times, but you know, she ran, I think, 3rd in the Edward Manifold, and she ran 4th in the Caulfield Classic against the Colts, and she was a very warm favourite that day. But then the form out of that, I think, Wanted, he ran 2nd or 3rd in that race, and he went on and won the Derby, so I think the form around those races at Caulfield were very strong. But then to see her win the Wakefield like she did, and then on to the Oaks, it's a double, the Wakefield and the VRC Oaks. It's just been won quite regularly by high-class fillies, and you know, and I know talking to Danny since the Oaks, he sort of said, well, you know, I'm very confident she's going to come up even better again come the autumn, so really looking forward to that now, but she'll have a photo on the wall for sure.
Another Group 1 win for Reliable Man. How important has that been for him?
It is very important, because it's been frustrating. I think he's had 6 or 7 Group 1 place getters in the last 12 or 18 months, and as we all know, running second doesn't count too often in this business, so it's about the winners, and so to get another one on the board. But I think the timing was extremely important too, in front of the Australians, which is our biggest market, at Spring Carnival time, and one of their blue ribbon events in the VRC Oaks. I think it was a huge win for him, and you know, 2nd Oaks winner for the year after Sentimental Miss winning the New Zealand Oaks in New Zealand. It's really sort of got everyone back on the path with Reliable Man, and I'm sure we're going to have a very good sale with the ones that we have there.
Tell me a little bit about Miami Bound's Dam. Does she have a foal at foot, and is she back in foal?
She does. She's got a very smart full brother to Miami Bound at foot, and she's currently in foal to Tarzino, so I think once again we've stick with that middle distance staying theme with her. I really think the Tarzino mating is as good, if not better, than the Reliable Man mating. But I guess out of commercial appeal, she'll be booking a date back with Reliable Man again next year. So the colt that we've got at foot, though, he's not dissimilar to Miami Bound at the same time. Perhaps a touch more leg, and he's a real smarty. So hopefully we'll look forward to talking about him this time next year.
This was a filly that got itself into trouble at a spelling farm, got caught up in a gate. X-rays were taken the following day and showed an unusual fracture off the back of the sesamoid. This fracture will never knit back together again, but over time it'll throw down a lot of scar tissue, and scar tissue in that area is not conducive to pain-free movement.
If you're a circulating nurse, you will make sure that everything's set up in surgery that the vet requires to do the surgery, all the equipment's ready. Basically just that everything is all prepared before we get in there. If you're the scrub nurse, you will scrub into surgery, so you'll assist the vet during the actual surgery. And both the nurses, whether you're scrubbed or circulated, will prep the horse for surgery.
Horses in general are about 10 times more risky than even a small animal, simply because of size and physiology. My role is to try and have the safest anaesthetic I can manage with what I've got. I'll put an endotracheal tube in it because that maintains an airway and gives us a route to give it the gases that are going to keep it asleep. I help get the horse on the surgery table and position it safely so that it doesn't have any pressure points and damage that can affect its recovery. We have an ECG so to monitor its heart rate. They have a pulse oximeter which shows me its pulse and also its oxygen levels. And I put in an arterial catheter so that we can measure its arterial blood pressure, which enables us to see the horse's blood pressure and tells us a little bit about the depth of the anaesthetic and what effects the anaesthetic's having on the horse. And then physically just watching the horse is really important because you can see if it's getting a little bit too deep or too light. But a lot of the anaesthesia is about the horse and keeping it at the right level of anaesthetic, but also because of their size, if a horse wakes up or becomes too light, it's actually pretty dangerous for everybody involved.
So there's our fragment there. In this particular procedure, we wanted to have a smaller incision as possible, and using ultrasound guidance is one way that we can get these fractures out without making a big hole. And so that's what we did at the time of surgery. Using sterile techniques, we located the fragment, managed to cut the fragment away from its surrounding soft tissues quite quickly and easily, but then discovered there was actually some unanticipated contamination in the surgical site from hair, which probably did happen at the original wounding. With hair contamination, there could be bugs in there. She wasn't lame, there didn't appear to be obvious infection in the bone, but we wanted to make sure that we got everything as clean as possible to minimise the chance of complications down the line. So it never ceases to amaze me how bits of dirt and debris and hairs can get embedded into bone, as has happened in this case. So we were very careful about methodically getting all the hair out where we could, getting the bone very clean and debrided of hair, and flushing the tendon sheath, because where the fracture was, by removing that bone we exposed a little bit of the tendon sheath as well. So it was sort of anticipated that we'd have to probably flush the tendon sheath, but we didn't anticipate having the hair contamination, which must have just been driven in there with the original wound, although the wound was a little way away from where the fracture was. Something must have penetrated unexpectedly to get to that location.
On the next episode of Kiwi Bred, we trace the story of champion Hong Kong galloper Beauty Generation and dual Group 1 winner the Bostonian. And our vet segment continues.